Meeting of the City Council successor agency to the redevelopment agency to order. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jeff, do we have any changes to the order of the agenda?
No changes from staff this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Any changes desired by the dais? All right, then we will move on to council communications and announcements. Matt?
I have nothing, thank you.
Bob?
I have nothing tonight either, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Cameron?
Thank you, Mark. This morning I attended a governing board meeting for the San Mateo County Library System. Among the things we did this morning is we passed the 2014-2015 budget for the library system. The library system covers 12 libraries, of which San Carlos Library is one of them. The budget for the next fiscal year is $38.6 million, which is a slight reduction over what it was for the last fiscal year. The other significant note about the library is that the library has a significant reserve that's driven by the fact that certain communities essentially draw more property tax than they can use for their library. So specifically Woodside, Portola Valley, and Atherton have money in excess of what they can use for the library. That goes into a pool, what they call donor funds. And so a committee is being formed to see what we should do with those donor funds, potentially to spend them on other libraries throughout the system. And just to note that Christine Boland, our Parks and Recreation Director, was appointed to the Donor Funds Subcommittee. The other thing I did since the last meeting is I attended the San Carlos Kiwanis Taste of Summer event on Saturday night, which is a great event, an auction, good wine, good food, raising money for kids in need and for the San Carlos Kiwanis Club. So that's my update.
Thank you, Cameron. Ron?
Thank you, Mark. Trying to figure out all these things that I went to at a Heart Board meeting a couple weeks ago. Also, we had a meeting of the Four Corners Working Group, which is a collection of individuals from the representatives from the council, the San Carlos School Board, Sequoia Union High School District, and Belmont representatives, including a couple of members of their city council, to figure out how we can solve the traffic issues at Carlmont and Tierra Linda intersections. And we did make some progress. We had a report from the analyst that's conducting the traffic study. We're going to have another meeting, I believe, at the beginning of August, where we're going to get another update. And at last, we think we're finally making some progress. We may see some real changes in that area very soon. And then lastly, I also attended the San Carlos wine auction last Saturday night along with Cameron and Mark, and I think I won a couple things, so it's always good to buy raffle tickets.
You have to share, though. You have to share if you win.
Well, one of them you can't, and I apologize. I was supposed to bring it with me, one of the things you won, because you weren't there, and I haven't. I have not tried it. I was told I should try it out. I'm like, no, I don't think he wants me to do that. But I will bring it to you perhaps tomorrow.
All right, well. And that's all I have.
All I had to report is I went to the Kiwanis auction as well. It was a lot of fun, and one of the items that was auctioned off was, as in years past, dinner served by the council, not cooked by the council, because we don't want to poison any of our constituents. So that was won by, I'm trying to remember who was the top bidder on that. But anyway.
Well, there was an individual, but then they did two.
They did two.
So the other's a good friend of mine, Mike Schmidt. And
Okay.
we're going to Redwood City for that one.
All right.
So, and Cameron's a good cook, by the way. So I've been told.
Oh, okay.
I'm not poisoning any.
Right, I misspoke. So anyway, a good time was had by all there. Jeff, any comments from the staff side?
Just a couple, Mr. Mayor. As I reported out at one of our meetings last week that was not recorded or televised, the city has received verbal confirmation from the Department of Finance that we will be able to proceed with the Wheeler Plaza project. And by proceed, I mean that project would begin to come to the council. There's been a lot of attention paid to Wheeler Plaza over the last couple of years by members of the community, so we wanted to just give them a quick update, let them know that things are moving forward and not to be surprised if it starts coming back up on the council agenda. I also wanted to remind folks that we do have a council meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning, June 10th, here at City Hall at 8 a.m.
Thank you. Is that at City Hall, or are we up in the library again?
I'm sorry, you're correct. It's going to begin
Second
at the
floor library,
library
community
of the
room.
second floor.
8 a.m. Thank you. We'll move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the council on items that are not on the agenda. If you wish to address us on an item that is on the agenda, we will do that in course as we get to each one of the items. I actually don't have any cards, Crystal, that you don't have either. Is there anybody who wishes to address the council on items not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to approval of the consent calendar. The consent calendar items that the council generally approves en masse without discussion, although any council member can ask to have one or more items removed and dealt with in a normal, more robust fashion. Are there any items that the dais would like to remove from the consent?
Item K.
Item K, that is the fire engine.
Pumper, yeah.
Okay, okay. So we'll remove that. Just for logistical purposes, Matt, do you anticipate a lengthy discussion, or is it just a brief? I'm trying to figure out where to slot it in the meeting, because we have some people here that are for that item, and I don't want to necessarily make them wait the entire meeting if I don't have to.
No, not a great deal.
Okay, all right. Anything else? If not, then I will entertain a motion with that item K not included.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve consent calendar items A through J and L, and adopt ordinance 1475, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Carlos amending the San Carlos Municipal Code, Chapter 15.34, Section 15.34.050, Residential Inspection Program.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Crystal, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Obert?
Yes. All right. If my colleagues don't mind, I think what I'd like to do is to take item K, 6K, out of order here rather than at the end of the meeting, because we do have some folks here, as I said. So is there a staff presentation on 6K?
Not a planned presentation, but I'm sure our Deputy Fire Chief Stan Moppin, who's here, can speak to the item, or we can just get into the questions or discussions, however you'd like to proceed.
Would you like the presentation?
No, that's okay.
Okay, then I think we'll hold off on that, Stan. So, Matt.
Just a question. And Bob will probably back me up on this, but when we had the Belmont San Carlos Fire Department, we developed somewhat of a schedule for replacement of equipment like this. It's quite expensive, and you don't want to do it more often than you need to, of course. And I intend to vote for this as replacing a piece of equipment that comes from 1993, but it does raise the question of where are we, what's our policy now with replacement of large equipment like this? How long do we intend to keep a fire engine, and how long do we plan to have it on frontline versus reserve, and then replace?
Thank you, Chief Moppin.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Stan Moppin, your deputy fire chief. To the question, we generally run the fire engines now about 10 years frontline with 5 years in reserve. The wear and tear that are going on that's on our equipment nowadays, and it's not just the San Carlos Fire Department, it's pretty much industry wide, is a lot higher than it used to be. The call volumes are going up. And the equipment is, well, it's quite expensive. It also is very complicated to maintain a lot of times because they become so complex to build. So we brought the service life to 10 years frontline, 5 years in reserve. The engine that we're replacing was actually pretty tired when we got it. Also, when the Belmont San Carlos Fire Department was dissolved. So we're in dire need of getting this engine replaced.
And then this, just for clarification, with our agreement with Redwood City and our contractual arrangement, we'll buy this piece of equipment. It'll come out of our general fund expenditures, and it will belong to the city of San Carlos. but it'll be operated by the employees that we contract with the Redwood City Department through to run and so forth.
Yeah, that's correct.
Correct. Okay. So that's fine, and I have no qualms with buying it. I do think though it would be good in the future, given the arrangement that we have. From my standpoint, and again, I think Bob might agree with this. These are the kind of things that we got into when we had a fire board, and we set a schedule. We talked about how often we're going to do this, and we set policies and so forth. And so I think something that's a little bit more proactive and a little bit more involving our council on that kind of thing, at least from my perspective. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I would like something to come to us earlier, discuss the policy, discuss what the schedule is going to be, and give us an opportunity to give some feedback on that. I was a bit surprised, I guess, to find it on the consent calendar. It's a huge item. $650,000 is no small amount of change, and I think it is something that it's probably a discussion we need to have as a council too. Is just this is one of those things that comes up, and obviously this is. At 15 years, that's 2008, so we're way beyond that, right? So
Yes.
I understand the purchase, but again, I have no qualms with it. I just think that it brings to the forefront something that we probably need to discuss as a council is, how we run this department when we have the equipment, we have the stations, but we don't have the firefighters.
Right.
So that's all. Thank you.
I just had it through the chair. What do we do with the old one, Chief?
We'll generally send that out to auction, and quite frankly, fire engines, when they're at this age, don't fetch a whole lot.
5,000?
Yeah, probably 10, somewhere around there.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's better than zero.
Yeah.
I somewhat agree with Councilmember Grocott in that we probably just need, and Mr. Malpe, I don't think it's a lot of work here, just we have 10 items or 10 big things, whatever we have that carried over. You obviously knew about it because it's in the budget, so it's no big surprise to you. But I think to us, especially since we're on the fire board, just a schedule. If you could just get us a schedule, and then we can sort of see, okay, we've got another engine coming up, or another huge piece of equipment probably in a few years, probably maybe next year. Who knows? Then it's like Councilmember Grocott said, it's not a huge surprise for $650,000. But obviously, it wasn't to the staff, so that's good.
Perhaps we can include a draft policy and schedule in the upcoming budget.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the purchase of the Seagrave Marauder fire pumper in the amount of $658,463.55.
Second.
And let's hope it's exactly 55 cents.
Either that, or I'll come out of if it's a dollar more, I'll pay. So,
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Crystal, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Obert?
Yes. All right, that takes us to items 7A and B, public hearing. Actually, Jay, before you get started, Greg, can you just remind me, I want to make sure I understand the protocol for public hearing properly.
Well, public hearings are usually required by a statutory reference. So a public hearing, you'll hear the staff presentation, council can ask questions, and then you would invite the public to speak. I always advise on a public hearing to actually make a request of the public just in case they aren't aware that it's a public hearing, and give them an opportunity to speak before the council takes action.
Do we need to formally open and close
Yeah.
the public hearing?
And if that was your question, I'm sorry, you should close the public hearing before you're ready to take motions.
Got it. Thank you. Jay, you're up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Jay Walter, Public Works Director. And the item I have for you tonight is the LED streetlight conversion project that we are proposing to undertake. And I'll have a brief staff presentation to make. In the audience tonight as well is Kathy Lavezzo and David Carter, representatives from PG&E, who are here should the council have any very technical questions as it relates to the program that we're working with PG&E on. We also have Paul Baker here, our maintenance superintendent in Public Works, who has the responsibility of managing the contractor who takes care of all of our streetlights as well. So he has extensive knowledge of the streetlight system in San Carlos. And so I guess I'll go ahead and I'll kind of get us started. So the light-emitting diode technology, that is the technology that we're proposing to replace the current high-pressure sodium streetlights within the city of San Carlos, it consumes less energy than the high-pressure sodium. So one of the immediate benefits is we have an energy savings that we can take advantage of. The city has had an early application of this through traffic signal indications. So virtually all of the traffic signals around town, the red, yellow, and green indications are LED indications. And the advantage of those certainly is that they last longer and they are less prone to failure because they can be partially failing, yet still have the indication that the traffic needs to see, whereas the old incandescent bulbs, they burned out and your indication was dark. So we have an application there. And LEDs typically can be better directed light, and there's less sort of spill out of bright light around those fixtures. The city had a project in 2011 where we took advantage of the ERA funding that the federal government was making available as part of the economic recovery, and 120 streetlights were converted from the high-pressure sodium to the LED, and that was done primarily in the areas to the east of Old County Road, the industrial areas, but not the residential neighborhoods east of Old County Road. And we had essentially one residential street that had the streetlights converted, and that's Britton Avenue as you came up to the west. I can't remember if it goes all the way to Alameda, but fairly far up on Britton Avenue. And those that was the first round of the LED streetlight conversion. We really haven't had any negative feedback about those lights, so from a standpoint of having some good work ahead of time, they had the foresight to put them in on some residential locations so we could get some feedback. So what we're asking the council to do tonight is approve an application for what's called the PG&E Turnkey Program, which is, as it's stated, a one-stop shop for the design, the construction, and the disposal of all of those old fixtures and the installation of the new fixtures. PG&E goes through and then modifies the billing rates, completes all the paperwork that's necessary, and essentially the city applies for and then pays the money, and it's really through our energy cost savings for the most part, but PG&E takes care of that whole thing for us. That's a significant savings in staff time, as we have been finding. One of the things how we became aware of this was we have been working with San Mateo County Energy Watch for the past 9 months or so to talk about and look for potential facility energy savings in facilities around the city. And so we kind of divided them into different groups. The LED streetlights as an opportunity, and then we have a list of other features within City Hall and the other city facilities that we will be continuing to work with San Mateo County Energy Watch and PG&E on. But this is the first one to come forward for a project. So part of the package, as shown in the staff report, is that there are rebates that the city is eligible for in converting these streetlights to LED. And for the city, for the streetlights that we have, it's been determined that we're eligible for about $100,000 in rebates if we make these conversions. Obviously, there's a cost to the conversion, but the rebate helps offset that cost. We have been grandfathered in on a list that has our eligibility for the rebates at this amount until July 1st. If we were to wait too long or get onto the list after that date, then our rebates would be much less than that. They wouldn't be the full $100,000. The cost of this project will be spread over 5.5 years, essentially paid for with the energy savings, the energy cost savings on our PG&E bill. And the city, at this point, is able to borrow $250,000 in the on-bill financing program through PG&E. That's the maximum amount that's available. That's a zero-interest loan, and we pay back PG&E via just making our energy payments to them on a monthly basis. We pay off that loan over the course of time. The advantage these days is that the streetlight LED technology has advanced quite significantly and dropped significantly in cost. and that's why we have such a short payback, relatively short payback period. Only a few years ago, the payback period was over 10 years, and it made it financially infeasible to make large-scale conversions. But now cities are lining up because the technology has advanced. So looking at the project costs, and I need to make a note, the staff report slide is slightly different than this, and the reason is I got this information from PG&E today. So, Councilmember Basili.
But we have a second one in the back now.
I apologize. Yes,
Another one. Maybe that one will be better.
this is the right one.
Oh, this is the right one.
That's right.
Okay.
So the 465,948, that's the number right now that we're looking for. And I would have, I know. And so you can see where it lines up with the total project price, the PG&E rebates that we're eligible for, that net cost, the on-bill financing amount that we would essentially be being loaned for to pay back off our energy bill, and then the net city cost out of pocket at this point, $115,000, or almost $116,000. And then below you can just see that energy cost savings per year, almost $68,000. So it's quite significant by making this conversion. And that payback period, a little over 5.5 years. So I apologize for the last minute change, but it's to the good. So I think that it is helpful comparatively. So the reason for the public hearing is as part of the procurement process, we're taking advantage of a government code section 4217, which allows for the city to streamline this procurement process by not going down the traditional design, bid, build route that we have with most of our capital improvement projects. And what this does is it allows us to contract with PG&E to do this or other eligible energy companies without having to go through a process that is, at least extending it out for a long period of time, but giving us the opportunity to move fairly quickly through the process and to construction. The energy impact for the project, 1,465 streetlights. We currently pay about $132,000 in energy costs for those streetlights. We will be saving almost 490 kilowatt hours of energy per year and reducing about 256,000 pounds of carbon dioxide in terms of gas reduction. So as I mentioned before, we've been working with San Mateo County Energy Watch and PG&E since December. The inventory of streetlights to be replaced and the equipment that they should be replaced with has already been determined by PG&E. And as I noted just a minute ago, this recent bid price has decreased our cost by about $15,000. So that's a good sign. And we're really in a position with PG&E that by approving the program tonight and the application for the on-bill financing, we can sign a work order with PG&E. They will make the procurement order, and we would be able to get the project started probably about 30 days after that. They would schedule their crews, and we would be able to begin the work. So probably in the 4 to 6 week range. And PG&E has been telling us that their procurement has been going fairly quickly lately, so that's a good sign too. And just a quick reference, the current street light as it kind of appears on your left, and then the LED street light has a slightly different head to it, and as you can see, it's got an edge around it which prevents a lot of light spill out from that. The large globe that's on the traditional street lights tends to have light spillover, so it tends to be brighter and more glary. And what we've made a note of in this project, the box lights that we have at our decorative traffic signals, those will be replaced by LEDs. But what we are not replacing are the decorative post tops that are in and around the downtown. The reason for that is because the fixture for that is still a little pricey. And so we felt like we could leave those out of the project and then at some point in time come back, and when the technology and the prices have come down, come in with a separate project where we can convert those streetlights. But for now, we felt like we should leave those out and try to keep our costs fairly manageable. So as far as alternatives go, the staff recommendation is for the council to appropriate the needed money from the city's general fund in order to the general capital fund in order to pay for that portion of the project at this time. But also, there's an opportunity if the council didn't want to do that, and we prepared a separate resolution, but I didn't bring it with me tonight, but we have it available. If the council wanted to pursue a low-interest loan with the California Energy Commission for the extra $135,000 that we're asking for. And that's low interest, and it would be paid off over a period of time. But our recommendation is based on cash and carry because that is such a small amount to get a loan for. And the paperwork is, as I understand it, it's fairly complex, but it's very likely we would get it if we applied for it. And also the council, if you chose, you could defer the conversion of the streetlights if you don't feel that's an important thing for us to be doing right now, or give us some other different direction if you choose. So that's the staff's recommendation, and at this point, I can take questions from the council.
Thank you,
before
Jay.
we go to public
Questions?
hearing.
Cameron?
Thanks, Jay. I'm very excited that we're doing this. I think this is a great example of a case in which you can both improve energy efficiency, save money, do something that's both in the financial interest of the city and in the interest of CO2 reduction and energy conservation. So I think it's awesome. My question for you is, you said the work could start, in 4 to 6 weeks. How long does it take to replace 1,400 streetlights?
According to PG&E, it probably would be another 4 to 6 weeks to be able to finish off all the
Oh,
work.
really? That's it.
They've identified it as a fairly short order project.
That's great.
To go out and take care of it.
And then my second question is, what's the useful life of one of those streetlights? When would they have to be replaced in the future?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just turn back and have our PG&E representative just kind of give me that answer, and I'll tell you.
So people use varying numbers, anywhere from 10 to 20 years. A lot of the studies are indicating that the lights will last longer than we've been able to study them. So 10 years is usually the minimum time frame, but a lot of people believe they'll last 20 to 25 years.
So for the benefit of the audience at home, 10 years essentially, and as long as 20 maybe, because the technology has not been out there long enough to truly test it out.
All right, great, thank you.
Other questions? Bob?
Jay, you've got energy, I guess, let me start with the payback here. You say we're going to borrow the $250,000 interest-free, fabulous, pay back PG&E each month. How long will it take us to pay it back?
5.5 years.
Okay. So when you have energy cost savings per year, the $67,000, that isn't really the amount we're paying back to PG&E.
The 67,000 times 5.6 or so gets us to that point.
Which would be like 300 and some odd thousand. So that's why we're only borrowing 250. That's my question. So it's less than 5 years, at least my numbers. That's why I apologize, but it doesn't work. All we have to pay back is the 250, right? We don't have to pay back the 100. The 100's a rebate.
That's right, and we have our own cash for the rest of the balance.
Right. Okay. All right. So 4 to 5 years. Okay, that's cool. I think, by the way, just to the council, I don't know what the the state would charge us, but I got to figure it's more than what we'd be making on our investments, now. So, Jay's right on that free is always better than any amount that we could borrow from the state, because it has to be more than 1%, or even if it's the same, then it's not a good cash move. So I commend you on that one. That's no problem. So that's all I had.
Ron?
I had two questions. Cameron asked one, so I have one. The LED lights, how much longer do they last when compared to the sodium vapor lights?
That's another good question, and maybe I'll turn to Paul Baker, and he has an idea of how long our HPS lights are lasting out there with our current contractor.
Okay.
About 15 years that they're lasting.
right.
Of course, barring any sort of kind of mechanical problem or anything like that.
Okay. That was it. Thanks.
Matt?
Yeah, I have one question. I'm wondering if Jay realizes that with this project, you hit our 3-year goals to provide effective and sustainable community health and public safety, enhance and sustain facilities, infrastructure, and technology, and plan for and implement financial sustainability.
I think I
I
completely.
put that out there for the other department heads. You got 3 of them. Maybe somebody else could perform as well.
Thanks.
I'm going to reveal my ignorance here. Isn't that a hat trick?
That's a hat trick.
Anything else, Matt?
No.
Okay, just a couple of quick questions. In terms of, in the replacement brightness level, changes, difference between high-pressure sodium and the LEDs? And actually related to that brightness level and sort of color, quality of color.
Right. And as far as brightness level goes, the fixtures that have been selected by PG&E with the equivalent wattage will essentially create the same level of brightness as the lights that are currently out there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the differences will be color. And the original LED project that was done in 2011, if you have noticed it, those lights tend to be much whiter looking than the yellowish color of the high-pressure sodium. The temperature range now of the LED replacements can be matched a little better to calling it like a warmer tone that you would tend to see with, but not nearly as sort of yellowish as the high-pressure sodiums. So we are able to kind of vary that and determine what color tone that we want to have with the replacements out there.
Okay.
The other point to make is that the light spillover is much different. So you will tend to have light that is really directed downward rather than having much spill up or farther away. So it's much more of a directional light. But the lumens, the way that the footprint on the ground would look, would be very similar for someone who's walking along to see that relative brightness at that location.
Okay, and that was going to be my next question, which is the cone of light, basically, is because that's one of the challenges with LEDs is they tend to be tighter, so that's not an issue. Roughly what percentage of the lights in town will this project have converted, or will we have converted to LEDs by the time we're done? The ones we've done already.
I'm going to have to ask the PG&E representative that one because he had done the original calculation with the total number of lights and the ones that we're converting now,
That's fine,
plus the 120 that we had with the original project.
just roughly.
90%, there were a number of
Oh, okay.
lights that were on the high wattage circuits, the high voltage circuits, and then a handful of decorators. So a good portion of these yellow lights will be done.
Okay, good. Then my only other comment, sort of following on that question, the discussion we were having about the quality of the light, is that I think this might be something that the city needs to publicize to the community that we're changing this, because otherwise you'll get a flood of questions about what's going on. I remember that happened when we switched to high-pressure sodium many, many years ago in many communities. So, any other questions? Then we'll take public comment. I have one card here from a Jason Tanko, but I'm not sure if it's on this item or the next item. Is it this item?
It was on the street.
Oh, please, come up, Jason.
So my name is Jason Tanko. I operate a lighting company in San Francisco called Tanko Lighting. We implement full turnkey municipal LED conversion projects nationwide. We save cities and taxpayers a lot of money, usually over 50%. Municipal turnkey LED conversions are really like the standard now, coming in, replacing everything. Streetlights are really like a focus and a passion for our company, and we've done many conversions, certainly across the country, but even here in the Bay Area. We just wrapped up Hayward, Napa, Rancho Cordova. We're currently involved in Pleasanton. We were just awarded Berkeley, and we actually are working with Morgan Hill, which actually used to be a PG&E full turnkey project. We saved the city of Morgan Hill close to $250,000 over PG&E's costs. Most of these cities and others on our resume were all through competitive public bids, which is obviously not what this is. This is a sole source award. Recent changes, allow for doing this. The reference was 4217, and actually assigning to PG&E would be the same as assigning it to anyone. It's essentially where you give your best offer. So essentially the options are assigned to a sole source, put it out to bid, and essentially where our savings are right now based on what we had from PG&E. It's very ironic they actually dropped their pricing today. I think they might have maybe found out that we're coming here, but originally it was $56,000 is what our savings was over the exact same project with more of a scope of work involved in relighting and designing the project. The 4 to 6 weeks and then another 4 to 6 weeks to implement seems a little long. We usually are installing from about 30 days to notice to proceed. So we understand this is late. We've actually been in touch with city staff since the end of March, but just really never got really anywhere. And unfortunately, this item really only was looked at with PG&E, and wasn't a very transparent process. So again, we just asked maybe 2 weeks or at least some time to review the findings that we've got. Certainly check our references and see if it would be worth assigning us the project, as we feel there could be more savings and the project can be done quicker.
Thank you, Jason. That's fine.
I actually have a few handouts. Just
feel free.
Just a little
Yes.
bit of information.
That's
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
While we're passing these on, I was wondering if staff would like to comment on the question raised about why do this as a sole source?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Jay Walter, Public Works Director. The opportunity as far as a sole source purchase goes, Government Code Section 4217 does allow for essentially a sole source purchase for these types of projects which have energy savings. When the city makes findings that say it's in the best interest of the city to do that, and it essentially streamlines that procurement process. So we're in a position with PG&E at this point, as I think Mr. Tanko is correct in saying that it's a sole source purchase, using PG&E as our broker for this. But we started this some time back, and it's a part of a much bigger effort that we're trying to make citywide with facilities as well as with the streetlights. So yes, we are going down that path. Mr. Tanko and I had a conversation today, and one of the things that I mentioned to him was that while he has provided information which says he can do the work cheaper, save the city, or have it cost the city less money, one of the things that I would be uncomfortable with would be taking that information and then coming back to you with a sole source contract with him, because there are other vendors in the area. As I've talked to a couple cities in the last few days about this issue. So I would be uncomfortable without putting out an RFP that provided a number of them the opportunity to submit proposals and be competitive for this work and potentially be chosen. So,
thank you. My question, I may have misled you a little bit. I guess what I'm wondering about are there comments that you would make from a fiscal perspective, that from a financial analytical perspective, cost and whatnot, that make the PG&E approach more attractive than some other approach, or vice versa?
well, there's actually, I would ask the city clerk to bring you up a handout that I can kind of walk you through with some information on it, which I think will illustrate that point. Well, the reasons for kind of staying the course with PG&E at this point in time. So I've provided you some information as it relates to, I'll wait till you get one I have one, but Jeff and Greg. So what I've done is I've kind of outlined as far as the PG&E proposal and the Tanko lighting proposal. And if I can I'll just distill to the key points that are in the middle of the page. Essentially, we're 95% done with this process. We're ready to have PG&E order materials and go to construction. So the process part is very nearly complete. I think that's a distinct advantage in PG&E's favor, that we're ready to, if approved, to go forward with ordering materials and begin construction. I see that any other work that we would have to try to evaluate cost savings, that would require us to prepare and process an RFP. And I believe that would be probably conservatively a 3-month process. So we lose 3 months, and in part, we lose the cost savings that we would have had in that 3-month window by not having the streetlights converted yet. So I've determined that that's a real cost that the city would be bearing. And then with respect to Mr. Tanko, there is no guarantee that should we go through an RFP process, that he would be the successful firm that we would select to do this work. No guarantee, so he can probably save money, but I don't know that he would be the firm that we would select. And if we didn't realize the savings, we would again be out the dollars and the time that we had moving forward. And finally, there is a potential risk of losing at least a portion of the rebates if we wait too long, if an RFP process took too long. There are times when an RFP process can be plagued by protests and other kinds of appeals. As I see this, the work with PG&E right now, I think we've come almost all the way through it, and I would hate to see us risk potentially losing time and dollars by going forward with an RFP and taking that extra time to evaluate these savings.
Are there any other questions for staff?
I just have one.
Not Cameron, Ron, sorry.
Thanks, Jay. Is there also, or isn't there also additional staff time involved?
In
Or has that
fact,
been factored in?
that's something which I mentioned on the page. I didn't bring it up, but yes, you are correct. That is something that one of my staff members would have to start working on, and we would have to set something else aside in order for them to be able to spend the time on that. And as council knows, they're very much committed right now to other capital projects and other things that we've been working on, had in the pipeline.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Thank you, Jay. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the council on this matter? Come on up. Oh, that's.
Yes,
come on up. The reason we ask folks to come up, just so you know, is because this is broadcast and recorded, and the microphones won't pick you up from back in the back of the room. So that's why I ask you to come up and star at the podium.
So how long would it take to save money, like with having to pay for all of it having to be built and stuff?
I think the answer, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the payback number you were talking about. It's like a little over 5.5 years. Good question. Anybody else wish to address the council on this matter? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Greg, do we need to call the roll on this, or is just affirmation okay?
On this matter, affirmation's okay on closing the public hearing.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Hearing none? Okay, public hearing is closed. So I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to adopt Resolution 2014-61,
61.
a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos approving a turnkey streetlight conversion project with Pacific Gas and Electric Company, PG&E, approving an application for the PG&E on-bill financing program and appropriating $135,000 from the general fund, Fund 25, to complete the project.
Is there a second?
A second.
There's a motion and a second. Any call for discussion?
The only, just, I suppose this is the appropriate time. Very happy with the project. That's why I lauded Jay for, hitting 3 of our goals. But I do think, with all due respect to the other vendor who came in the future, I'd like to, any opportunity there is to take something like this out to market, I think is, regardless of whether PG&E is there and, a willing partner and everything, which I appreciate. But, there's a great big business world out there that competes, and as much as we can be in the competitive market, I'd like to see us do that. So.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion?
I just have one question. Jay, if we went up to an outside vendor, would PG&E give us a $250,000 no-interest loan?
Yes, on here.
Councilmember Grisilli, yes, we would still be eligible for the on-bill financing program.
But they could or could not? We'd be eligible. Does that mean we're going to get it?
We would get it, yes.
Okay, just asking.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
PG&E is as interested in that energy savings for us as well, so we
Just a
would.
question. Free money is free money. So, okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, Crystal, if you'll call the roll, please.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Obert?
Yes. That's item 7A. We move on to item 7B, public hearing on consideration of a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos authorizing the execution and delivery by the city of a site and facility lease and a lease agreement with respect to the acquisition of real property located at 595 Industrial Road and 850 East San Carlos Avenue in the city of San Carlos, modifying the total appropriation amount from the city's Strategic Property Acquisition Reserve, otherwise known as SPAR Fund, in connection with the property acquisition, and authorizing the execution of necessary documents and certificates and related actions. Good evening, Al.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Before I begin, I'd like to make some introductions of our financing team. Tonight we have Mike Kavanaugh, the city's placement agent, who helped to orchestrate the financing package with Alliance Bank. We also have Judy Wunderlich, who is with Jones Hall and who is our bond counsel. We have Nikki Murphy, who is our economic development counsel and worked closely with the city on the purchase and sale agreements with the sellers. And Jim Simon with RSG, who has worked diligently with us, is unfortunately not able to attend this evening. I may call upon these individuals to assist me in answering questions from the City Council. Just to orient you very quickly, this is the landmark site, and it consists of 5 properties. It's located on Industrial Road at Holly Street, and here's the 101 corridor. These are the 3 properties that we're talking about this evening. 810 East San Carlos has already been purchased by the City of San Carlos, and we're looking to finance the purchase of 850 East San Carlos and 595 Industrial. The reason that we're doing that, as you can see on the screen, there's a long history, and it actually goes beyond the slide here. But as you know, hotel development has long been sought by the city as a means to increase the diversity of our general fund and our general fund revenues. And conservatively, we may see revenues from a hotel in the $1 million to or above range. Funding for the acquisition of the properties is coming partially from the Strategic Acquisition Reserve Fund, and we had $7.25 million in that fund. However, the city doesn't have sufficient cash in this fund to cover the entire purchase price, so we employed a financing team, as I noted, that consisted of all these individuals and other individuals to help the city get private placement from a bank. And we've reached favorable terms with Western Alliance Bank to obtain the financing to complete the purchase. The lease financing is necessary, as I noted, because the city doesn't have the sufficient funds to purchase it outright itself. And however, cities are permitted to finance the purchase of a property by other means. And in this case, it would be a bank loan structured through a leaseback arrangement with a qualified lender. And in this case, the qualified lender is the bank, Western Alliance Bank. People are more familiar with bond financing. Cities also do that. A leaseback structure allows a city to obtain a lump sum lease payment from a lender, which is used to purchase the property and then make a leaseback payment to the lender, commensurate to the interest and potentially some principal if it's desired. Private bank financing is an effective means for acquisition and is a popular approach employed by other cities in California. And at the end of the day, the idea is to develop a hotel site. So the idea is we would go through the entitlement process with R.D. Olson, who is the selected hotel developer. And at the end of the entitlement process, which we believe could take about a year, R.D. Olson would then purchase all 3 of the properties back from the city, giving us the money and making us whole again. So really, we're holding these properties so that we can get the entitlements to the hotel developer. Total costs of the land purchase for all 3 properties, including costs of issuance and environmental remediation, is $14,513,840. Council previously approved appropriations from the SPAR Fund for the acquisition of the 3 properties up to an amount of almost $6.8 million plus the closing costs associated with each of these property purchases. But based on an update of actual expenditures to date and estimated the remaining fees and costs for this transaction, staff is recommending that the total appropriation from the SPAR fund be $5.8 million. Western Alliance Bank is proposing a 5-year lease financing with semi-annual payments due in June and December of each year. And interest payments would commence beginning December 1st of 2014, and then interest payments or principal payments would not begin until 2015 of December. And so that gives us about a year and a half to get through the entitlement process before any principal would be necessary. The actual interest rates would be locked once the City Council, or if the City Council approves the financing, but as of May 30th, 2014, the interest rate would be about 3.51%, and then after the first 2 years, it would increase to 4% thereafter. And based on these rates and assuming the financing amount of $8.79 million, the lease payments would work out as shown on the slide there. And finally, city staff is recommending approval of the resolution authorizing financing strategy and the adjustments to the SPAR fund appropriations. And so if this goes forward tonight, what we would do next is the ABAG application to join as an associate member, a nonprofit member with ABAG Finance. And then we would close on 595 and 850 East San Carlos Avenue on or before June 20th, and then start the entitlement process for the hotel with R.D. Olson. And that concludes the staff report, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Al. Questions for staff? Matt?
So you said that there was some 5.7 that's going to come out of the Strategic Property Reserve Fund?
It's about, yeah, the net dollars would be 5.7 million. We're asking for 5.8.
Okay. And then you said the city's holding this just temporarily.
That's correct.
How much money goes back into the fund after it's all said and done?
It would be 13.69 million. Let me make sure that that's the correct number. It would be the cost of the purchase of the site that would go back into the SPAR fund.
Less repaying the loan.
Right.
Less repaying the loan.
That's, I guess, what I'm getting at.
Yes.
So, what's that dollar amount?
That would be minus 109,000. So, let's see, 8.792 would be the financing and the cost. Let me add this up for you. Be about 14,514,000.
So we
minus,
less
I'm
the
sorry,
pay-
minus
less
the
paying
cost,
loan.
right,
Paying
minus
loan
the
off.
cost of issuance. So it'd be about 1369. About $1.26 million
would go
would
back
go
in.
back into the fund.
So we take almost 6 million out and only put back 1.5.
No.
You put, I'm sorry,
No.
12,600,000.
But,
Yeah.
but you got to pay the loan off, so.
All right. Nobody really has a clear answer
I got-
right here.
If I may,
Yes.
it would be our intention to put all the money back into the SPAR fund, either through the direct sale of the property or once the transit occupancy tax begins to flow. The policy decision at the staff level, my policy decision is to repay 100% or more of the SPAR fund, either through the direct sale of the property.
Well, shouldn't
or
it be more
combination.
because while money is out of the SPAR fund doing something else, it's we're paying interest. That's what keyed my question up to begin with, is I heard, okay, we're paying interest, so that means we're obviously going to either put less in or have to come up with, like you say, money from someplace else.
If I may, I believe, if I understand it, the plan is the interest payment would be coming out of the general fund. Is that correct?
It can, yeah, either way. Right now, it would come out of the general fund, could come out of the SPAR fund, which essentially is just a general fund
Right.
subcategory. And the last several years, we have increased funding for the SPAR fund far greater than how we'll be expending it. So I would actually expect before we sell the property to continue to grow the SPAR fund through annual budget savings, which is what we've done the last several years. That's been the primary source of funding. There was an initial seed amount from the In-N-Out property sale, as you know, Councilmember Grocott, but I believe that was what, $1 million? Yeah, a little over $1 million. So the rest of the money's come from general fund budget savings.
Okay, because the point is two things. You're paying interest, and you have opportunity costs, meaning while the money's not in some fund earning interest, and I understand, we invest so conservatively that we don't these days make very much interest, but we are losing that. So you're not only paying interest to somebody, you're losing the interest you would earn over here. And I would think maybe it's a discussion separate to this, but to some extent. But I do think, just like when we sold the In-N-Out land, council was very clear in the direction we gave. That money is supposed to be used for purchasing property. So I would expect that we would put back in $5.7 million plus something to account for the loss of that money working for us while it was out doing something else. And so we can discuss that when we get to that part.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the intent is to get TOT, which would be a very significant amount of money. So let's say you're out a few $100,000 for the purchase and sale as part of the costs of doing business. You could always backfill it, and of course that's a decision for the council and city manager, but you could always backfill it with transit occupancy tax that you're going to get, we estimate $1.2 million a year, so you could put that back in the first year of full operation of the hotel or some amount of that back.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Cameron?
I had kind of a basic layman's question. So I read in the staff report that the reason that we're partnering with ABAG is because the city doesn't have a separate financing authority. Can you help explain what a financing authority is in this case and why we can do other financing deals, but we can't do this one in particular?
I'm going to ask our bond counsel to attempt to answer that question. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Julie Wunderlich with Jones Hall. In order to do a lease financing, you need to have a counterparty to the city, and it needs to be a financing authority. Some cities have their own that they've established. In this case, there wasn't one, so we're going out to ABAG's financing authority and asking them to participate, and they do that for a small fee.
State law, I assume? State law requires that?
Well, you need to have a counterparty to the lease.
State law requires it, or is it?
Yeah, yes, because you need to have.
That's the answer. State law requires that you have to have a counter.
Okay. And sorry, so can you just define what a financing authority is then?
A financing authority is formed under state law and to provide financing opportunities for, in most cases, municipalities and other government agencies.
Okay. That'll have to do. Thanks.
All right. Bob, did you have a question?
Oh, yeah. Al, what is the rationale behind, since you want to get approval for 9.6 instead of 8.790?
The rationale there is we've been advised by our bond counsel and our economic development council to go with the full amount that the bank is offering the city. So essentially, I guess I would liken it to a home equity line of credit where a bank offers you total amount, but you don't have to spend it all. So the bank is offering the city $9.6 million. It allows you to have some flexibility in case there's unforeseen costs, or I've talked to our financing placement agent about perhaps using that for other purposes, buying a land next door, or other ideas.
So, but we don't have to pay any of that or the difference of about not quite $1 million unless we borrow it.
That's correct. No principal or interest, only on the amount that you use. So it'd be the 8 point.
Okay, and there's no prepayment penalty on this?
No.
Okay. And we're assuming that, the plan is basically we bought it for X, whatever number it is, 13.5, 14.5, whatever the number is. We hope to sell it for X.
That's correct.
But we may not. It's possible.
R.D. Olson knows what the terms of the deal are, and that will be part of our deal with R.D. Olson, is here's how much you're going to pay for it.
You pay us that, okay.
Yes.
Again, just want to make sure everybody understands that it's not going to be a 20% discount or something like that.
No.
Okay.
baseline is the amount that we paid for the property. That's
Sure.
the baseline amount that R.D. Olson would give the city.
Thank you.
Anything else?
One question. Again, layman's question. Why do we call it a lease? Is it because we're renting money, or? I know it said site facility lease. Are we actually leasing the facility because we don't own it yet?
I'm going to have bond counsel again try that.
Judy was right behind you there.
She knew that was coming.
Just stay up here. A financing lease is authorized under California law. Well, actually, the courts recognize the ability to do a financing lease. Under the state constitution, a city could not do a form of financing that went out for many years unless there was 2/3 approval of the voters. But under case law, a financing lease is something that can be done without approval of the voters. That's why you set it up as a lease-back with a financing authority. And it's really just a very common method for allowing for a long-term financing that doesn't require approval of voters.
I think I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just had a few questions. Actually, let me start with one teeing off of a question Bob asked. So are we committed to selling the property to RDO at whatever we buy it for?
That's correct.
So we are committed to that?
Yeah, well, whatever we buy it for, you mean the exact dollars?
Yes.
As I noted earlier, R.D. Olson knows that they need to buy the city baseline for the $13.69 million that we're paying for all three of the properties. So they know that that's the deal.
The RFP spoke to that issue as our intention. The MOU will put it in writing in terms of contract form, and the MOU's yet to be negotiated. We'll obviously be looking to get the most advantageous terms in that MOU for the city as we can.
Okay, fair enough. What are, can you give me some, and this may be a Judy question, can I get some examples of other cities, other public agencies that have used this form of financing?
Sure. I'm going to ask Mike Kavanaugh to try and answer that.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Mike Kavanaugh. I'm with Southwest Securities. The leaseback is done by essentially every other municipality. City of San Francisco does it. City of Burlingame has done it. City of Newark has done it. City of Hayward has done it. I did it with Folsom. I've done it with National City. There's a number of, it's very common, as Julie spoke from Jones Hall, it's a very common form of borrowing.
Okay, thank you. Al, the last question I have, and it may be in two parts. So principal repayment starts December 1st, 2015, and as you mentioned, that's roughly a year and a half from now. Do we actually expect that we would be through the entitlement process by then?
Yes.
So in a sense, if things work out the way we hope, this is essentially would be an interest-only loan, and then we do the transaction and clear the books. RDO pays us. And
yes.
And if it happens to spill over past that a little bit, is staff comfortable that we can fit the almost $1 million principal repayment for that first tranche in the budget?
Yes, we are. And again, we would anticipate recovering the principal when we sold the property.
I understand. It's a cash flow question, not a value question, unless
Correct.
property values crater, and that's a risk in this, but a risk that I'm willing to take. Any other questions?
No, just to back up, if I, just to sort of, again, jump on that one too. What we're assuming is that we're going to make very few, if any, principal payments. In other words, we're going to get cash. We're not going to be the middleman. We're not going to make a deal where they're going to pay us a little money and then we pay somebody else a little money for 6 years or 4 years.
That's correct.
Okay.
Our plan is for our
Cash.
first principal payment to be to pay off the entire loan.
Yeah, for our first, okay, I just want to make sure everybody understands, we're not going to be the middleman here. So it'd be great if if I was buying this, I'd be loving this and have the city be the middle, but okay, thank you.
Okay. I don't have any, thank you, Al.
Thank you,
I don't
Al.
have any cards from anybody who's indicated they wish to speak to the council on this matter, but if there's anybody who wishes to, now's the time.
Somebody left his spectacles here. Okay. I'm Bob Black, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I really feel quite helpless here. I don't understand the financing. But who's going to end up owning the site? That's one question I have. Mm-hmm. Will the city retain possession of the site, or will it go to the developer?
The plan is, and the plan and the desire of the city is that it go to the developer. So the city would not retain ownership of the site.
Okay, I think that's a major mistake, that we should retain that property as it will, again, once you sell the property, you've lost control of it. And would be best, in my mind, if we kept the property and leased it to the developer over a period of time, so at the end of, say, 100 years, the property would still belong to the city of San Carlos. The hotel at that point would be worthless, most likely, and we could use it for another hotel or some other completely different purpose. So I'm really bothered by the idea of selling the property to the developer.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Did you wish to come up and address us again? By the way, you are not required to tell us who you are, but we wouldn't mind if you did.
My name is Michael Emerson, and I live in San Carlos. So there right now is La Garza, I think, or Pay's Place, a basketball court on one of the buildings that they're trying to buy. So what would happen with that? Would they build another one, or would people that play basketball just have to go somewhere else if they want to?
I think I will have, thank you. I think I will have Al answer that question.
So ultimately, yes, the sports facility that's there and some of the other businesses would need to be relocated. With the Pay's Place, they've been offered a lease to stay there until we absolutely need to take the buildings down, or the developer does. So that could be, again, a year from now that they would be able to stay there or more, depending on the schedule for deconstruction of the buildings. But yes, those businesses would need to be relocated.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, that's all right.
You may want to sit in the front row.
That's right. My colleague Ron is right. You might sit in the front row. Save yourself a little time.
Sit next to Mr. Black.
I'm Michael Emerson again. So in San Mateo, they had the same thing with a hockey rink, and they're still going on, but they decided to have a recreation, they wanted to make it into a soccer or something. But would it still be a basketball court, or would they just put it under recreation and it could be something else?
No, what'll happen here is that the property will turn into a hotel, basically. So there won't be any basketball or gym facility there after the hotel is built.
When they move, will Pay's Place, like, will they own it, or will the city, like?
Pay's Place is selling us the property.
Oh.
I think that's accurate. Is that not right, John?
No, the people that own the property, the land, and the people that own the business are different people.
Oh.
And the people that own the property have planned to sell it for a while. So it could, under one scenario, it was the buildings were all going to be demolished and a new company was going to build a gym there. But the people that own Pay's Place will still own the business in the future. It'll have to be relocated someplace else eventually before the hotel can be built.
You're welcome. All right, any other questions? Anybody else wish to address the council? If not, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move we close the public hearing.
A second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay. Public hearing is closed. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve resolution number 2014-62,
62.
resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos authorizing the execution and delivery by the city of a site and facility lease and a lease agreement with respect to the acquisition of real property located at 595 Industrial Road and 850 East San Carlos Avenue in the City of San Carlos, modifying the total appropriation amount from the City Strategic Property Acquisition Reserve, SPAR, Fund in connection with the property acquisition and authorizing the execution of necessary documents and certificates and related actions.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I think it might be valuable for everybody to hear the reasons why we're not leasing the property. I think Mr. Black would benefit from that, and anybody else who's interested might also benefit from it.
Sure, be
So I
happy
don't know
to.
who'd like to answer that, Al or Jeff?
Be happy to answer that for you, Vice Mayor. The city has explored that option. We issued an RFP for hotel developers. We talked to all the respondents about the possibility of a land lease option with them. All the developers told us that they wouldn't be interested in pursuing the project if we had an intention of land leasing it. So really here, what we're doing is we're stepping in, we're making a purchase, we're only planning to hold this property for a year, and then we're putting it back into the hands of the private sector. The only reason that we're getting involved at all is to bridge the gap between the desire to build a hotel and the 12 to 18-month period that it would take to get a hotel entitled. Otherwise, the whole project could not work out from a timing perspective for the people that own the land now. So it's just not an option that's available to us, Bob. It's something we did explore.
Any further discussion? If not, Crystal, please call the roll.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
No.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Obert?
Yes. With that, we move on to item 8A, consideration of a resolution approving associate membership by the City of San Carlos in the ABAG Financing Authority for Nonprofit Corporations and execution of an associate membership agreement relating to the associate membership of the city in the authority. Hello again, Al.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. So this is the request to prepare the application and approve the application with ABAG. And ABAG, as noted in the last presentation, is the financing authority for nonprofit corporations, and it was formed. This financing authority was formed to help nonprofit corporations and cities and other entities obtain financing for properties and purposes that serve the public interest. And the City of San Carlos doesn't have a separate financing authority, and as noted by our bond counsel, we're required to go out and become part of a financing authority for this purpose. The financing authority would assign any rights under the leaseback agreements to Western Alliance Bank pursuant to a separate agreement with the bank. And ABAG would then allow the transaction to occur. And there is a one-time membership fee of about $2,500 with no ongoing costs associated with this membership. Staff is recommending that the City Council approve the resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the member agreement with ABAG Financing Authority for nonprofit corporations, and that concludes the staff report.
Questions for staff? Seeing none, well, actually, I do have one quick question myself. So there's the one-time fee, and then I thought bond counsel had indicated that there was a pass-through, like a spread, basically, between what we pay the financing authority and what they pay the lender. So is there that kind of cost overload on it, or no? I misunderstood. Okay. So it's just the $2,500?
That's correct.
One time. All right.
That's it.
Fine. Any other questions? Ron?
I guess I just have one. I guess if we ever get into one of these deals again, we don't have to pay this fee, right? Since it's a one-time fee.
I think we're a one-time fee. We become an applicant, a member of the financing authority, so I think we're good.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Seeing no further questions, is there anybody in the public who wishes to comment on this item? Don't have any cards. Okay. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt Resolution 2014-
63.
a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos approving associate membership by the City of San Carlos in the ABAG Financing Authority for Nonprofit Corporations and execution of an associate membership agreement relating to associate membership of the city in the authority.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Crystal, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Basili?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
No.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Obert?
Yes. All right, item 8B, consideration of bids and omission of the additive bid items in the contract to be awarded.
Easy for you to say.
And I was about to remark about how I was impressed that Cameron almost managed to do circular breathing on that one, do the whole thing. Awarded for the council chamber remodel ADA compliance project, number C9802.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. My name is Matt Lee, City Engineer. Putting before you tonight the bid results for the City Council Chamber ADA Compliance Remodel Project. The bids occurred on June 5th. Two bids were received. The lowest bidder came in at $522,000, and the base bid item was under budget. If you add all the support items and the administration costs, we were able to cover the cost under that amount. However, staff decided to bring the item back to council to discuss if any additive items, if there were any added items that needed to be that council wanted to add. And staff's recommendation was that we would like to maintain the original base bid scope in order to keep enough contingency to continue the project forward within the tight time frame that we have for the construction portion of the project. If the project is accepted tonight, the contract execution will be anticipated for June 20th, with a notice to proceed in late June, and start of demolition after the last council meeting before the recess on July 15th. We anticipate finalizing the council chamber construction project on September 29th. With that, is there any questions?
Questions for Matt? Bob?
So we had two bids?
Yes.
What were the bids?
So two bids, one came in at $522,000. That's the lowest bidder, and the second one came in at $579,000.
So the low bidder came in exactly what we had estimated?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
What was it? There was the name. I'm sorry. Do we have a name of the low bidder?
The name of the contractor was Zolman.
I'm sorry?
Zolman. Zolman Construction.
Okay, thank you.
Cameron, did you say you had?
So we're not taking any action tonight, this is just an update?
Yes, this is just an update.
Thanks. Oh, I thought we were-
Well, we would be taking action if we were to add in some of the. added
Correct. You would be taking an action if
But
you
we
were.
take no action if we are not adding it in.
Correct. If you were going to go with the staff's recommendation, there would be no action.
I see.
If you wanted to proceed with a different direction, there would be an action taken.
Ron, I think you said you had some questions.
Just one question, but the total project cost is still $800,000. This is just the construction portion of it, is that correct?
Correct. Okay. So if you go back to the original project budget screen, all the price breakdown is there. Essentially, the construction budget leaves it just enough for us to have 15% contingency to encounter anything during construction, so we can proceed forward with the project.
Matt, the question I have is just in terms of the scope of what's in the 522. So does it include or not include, actually, let me just ask the question differently. What does it include in terms of a projection screen?
So for the 522 in the base bid, there is a projection screen that will be sitting behind the dais, and it will be a projection screen and not a monitor.
Okay.
Not a
And the
plasma
monitor was an option, more expensive.
The monitor was an option, however, I believe at the last council meeting, there was direction from council to not have that as part of the base bid. So the architect decided, or they worked with the audiovisual team to come up with a more cost-effective option, which was the projector screen itself, and to have, I believe, 19-inch monitors on the dais that can be shared between the council members.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor, if I can add,
Yes,
just for the sake of clarity, the plan here is basically to go with the minimum bid package to maintain the contingency. If the project comes in, at its price, we would likely take a look at some of those additives because it would be within the scope of the project budget to do at that time. So basically, we're more concerned in getting the infrastructure and the bones in place so that these types of things could be added or changed in the future.
Understood. Matt, I made a note when you said there were two bids.
Yes.
I would actually, should I read anything into the fact that there weren't like 3 bids or 4 bids? 2 bids just seems like I would have expected more. But
Well, I would read into what the construction climate is right now. Based on our conversations with contractors, there's just a lot of projects that are out there, and in this council chamber, although it's a large dollar amount for us as a city, typically general contractors see this as a small project, and so there was something that they probably felt there were other bigger projects that they would want to go after.
Okay, so it's a sign of how hot the construction market is right now.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions from the dais? Thank you, Matt. Anybody from the public wish to address the council on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion. If anybody wants to make additive items, and remember, you don't have to, if you want to add any of the items in.
No.
I don't see anything for that, so we thank staff for the update, and we will proceed on to item 8C. Thank you, Matt. Consideration of adopting a resolution selecting Alternative 2 pedestrian overcrossing as the city's preferred alternative for the Holly Street US 101 interchange project C9459, and directing that Alternative 2 be the only alternative to be fully evaluated during the environmental assessment for the project. Welcome back, Jay.
Missed you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Jay Walter, Public Works Director, and I'm just looking to see if I think I've got the right presentation to come up. I'll introduce
Bob will point it out to you if you don't.
Thank you for the help. I appreciate that.
Mr. Picky.
I'll introduce our consultant, Keith Meyer from Rajappan and Meyer, who's been diligently working on this project for a good long time now. And so we've got kind of a key milestone that we've reached, and we need council direction on it. So I'll go ahead and ask Keith to come up and work through the presentation, and then be ready to answer questions after that.
Good evening, Keith.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Nice to see you again. I'm Keith Meyer with consulting firm of Rajappan and Meyer Consulting Engineers. What we wanted to do tonight was just give you a little project update, talk about the alternatives that we have refined further from the last time that we met with you, I believe in September of 2013 on this project. And as Jay indicated, seek some direction on moving forward with a preferred alternative. If you recall, the project has three primary purposes. First is to reduce the existing weaving within the interchange, both on Holly Street and on Highway 101, reduce pedestrian and bicycle conflicts, as there are minimal facilities on Holly Street to get across Highway 1, and finally to improve that pedestrian and bicycle east-west connectivity over 101. We've been busy for the last several months, almost 12 months now, going through a typical Caltrans 5-step process. We are in the middle of this process right now, project analysis. We've developed the design further. We've conducted all the preliminary environmental work. We are ready to submit our environmental work to the state, Caltrans, to start the approval process. So tonight is a timely point in the process that we can get direction from council. To recall, the existing interchange is an antiquated four-leaf cloverleaf. We will be, at a minimum, modifying that interchange to a partial cloverleaf with changing the exit loop ramps to signalized intersections, both in the northbound and southbound direction, plus restriping Holly Street to accommodate at least bike lanes, sidewalks on both sides, and automobiles with new signalized intersections at each of the ramp terminal. Where the alternatives came into play was how do we deal best with pedestrian and bicycle traffic. If you recall, back in September, we had 5 alternatives that we showed to you and discussed. Alternative A was a loop set of ramps through the interchange. Alternative B was a facility further south. Alternative C was a pedestrian overcrossing immediately to the south of the interchange. Alternative D was a pedestrian overcrossing on the north side. And alternative E would be no separate pedestrian crossing. Since that time, we have determined through engineering and risk assessment that constructing a separate POC further south, which would be pretty much adjacent to the property that you just approved acquiring tonight on the San Carlos alignment, is extremely expensive and would have significant right-of-way impacts. And also one that we were encouraged by last time, which was a pedestrian crossing on the north side of Holly Street, is not technically feasible because we couldn't get the vertical grade to work coming down from crossing over 101 to meet intersections at grade. So that leaves us with 3 alternatives that we've been studying, as Jay said, diligently for the last year. That is the loops through the interchange, a pedestrian crossing that's immediately to the south, as well as just restriping and modifying the interchange without any separate pedestrian crossing. We've renumbered these from their former nomenclature to Alternative 1, which is the loops through the interchange, Alternative 2, which is a pedestrian overcrossing south of Holly Street, and Alternative 3, which is no separate pedestrian crossing. So just a little highlight on the concept for each of those. We have furthered the engineering and submitted the engineering to Caltrans for review on all of these alternatives. Alternative 1, which is the loop concept, would provide a connection to the San Carlos Street bike corridor as well as to Holly Street. It would provide a connection underneath the southbound ramp, wind up to cross over 101, attached to the existing Holly Street bridge, and that would be done by widening the bridge by about 8 feet to the south side. Then loop back down through the loop ramp underneath 2 bridges for the loop, the northbound loop and the northbound off ramp, then connecting a facility still on the south side. What we found in our engineering, whereas we thought this, prior work thought that this alternative would be less expensive than a pedestrian overcrossing, we have now concluded after developing a way to build it that because we are crossing underneath to an existing ramp and 2 ramps here, construction of those bridges would be very extensive and fairly expensive, such that this alternative is equal to cost of a pedestrian overcrossing, or maybe even slightly more expensive. Alternative two, this configuration is rendered here in this alignment that shows how the bicycle ramp would parallel the loop on-ramp and go underneath a couple of bridges to continue on Holly Street. Fairly circuitous and definitely in the eyes of Caltrans, the approving authority, quite unconventional. Such that additional exceptions to Caltrans design standards would be required from those which are already approved in order to get this particular alternative approved. A rendering of the base improvement project where we're restriping and modifying the interchange to a partial cloverleaf, then overlaying how that bicycle facility would connect through the interchange around and loop underneath. Alternative two, which we're seeking your approval tonight, would be for a separate pedestrian overcrossing immediately to the south of the interchange. This alignment was formerly, as I mentioned, along the San Carlos alignment, requiring an extensive amount of right-of-way, about $5 million worth of right-of-way. This new alignment, which we have engineered, requires no additional right-of-way outside of what's inside the existing state right-of-way already. So it's been a very solid engineering solution, the geometry and engineering of which Caltrans has already concurred with. This project is approximately the same as the going through the loop ramps, slightly less, about $15.8 million. There is right-of-way associated with all of these alternatives. That happens to be along industrial for right turn lanes. So that's why you do see a right-of-way number, but it's common to all alternatives. This alternative would result in bike lanes and sidewalks along Holly Street in both directions, plus a separate facility for recreational users for bicycles and pedestrians. This would be similar to the pedestrian overcrossing that is immediately south of the US 101 Broadway interchange in Burlingame, and would be connected to the ramp intersections and up and over. Again, our base construction project, then the location of the pedestrian overcrossing immediately south. We would be connecting to San Carlos Bikeway with a facility that would cross under and connect, and we would also be connecting to any improvements in bicycle traffic along Holly Street at Industrial. This is a picture, or there's a location looking north, right at the corner of Skyway. As you exit northbound, this facility would be crossing to the south of Holly Street as an elevated pedestrian overcrossing, similar to the ones that we currently have up and down the 101 corridor. So very typical facility embraced by Caltrans along 101. And the last alternative, which is to do neither a pedestrian undercrossing or a pedestrian overcrossing. This is the base project that we talked about. That is an $11.5 million project, similar to the base rendering that we've talked to you about here. So, comparing the three, we have alternative one with the undercrossings, alternative two with the overcrossing, alternative three, neither a pedestrian overcrossing or undercrossing. We find that the costs between the two more expensive alternatives are effectively the same, with the pedestrian overcrossing an easier construction project from Caltrans' approvability standpoint, provides bicycle lanes and pedestrian facilities on Holly Street in both directions, and costs a little bit less, $400,000 less than the other build alternative. So, also, we are showing that as we look towards the future of the connection of bicycle corridor along San Carlos Street. If you recall, a couple months ago, we talked about bike lanes and alternatives along Holly Street, which this connects to. You can see that we start to get a very good connectivity across Highway 101 with these improvements. So the council considerations really tonight are, do we just continue with alternative 2 as the only build alternative in the environmental document, or do we consider alternative 1 or alternative 3 or both? One alternative may allow faster processing of our environmental document. We know that it will allow for faster design approval processing because there are no additional design exceptions required for that alternative. Oh, excuse me. As long as it's alternative 2. More than one alternative will require a longer time frame for approval, and alternative 1, the pedestrian undercrossing, will certainly require extensive more design approval process than either one of alternative 2 or alternative 3. So the staff recommendation is to proceed with alternative 2, the pedestrian overcrossing on the south. It meets the purpose and need of the project, achieves the very good pedestrian and bicycle connectivity across. The design type is preferred by Caltrans, and there are no new design exceptions. And it will allow us to process the environmental document as quickly as the environmental document can be processed with Caltrans. This alignment, it has been reviewed by the city's T&C Commission back in September, prior to the time that we reviewed it with you as well. So we have 3 alternatives for the council tonight. Adopt a resolution selecting alternative, do not adopt the resolution, or provide staff with different direction. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. Questions for staff? Matt?
So with any of these, first, I'm assuming this is a two-way street, as it were. The path, the bike pedestrian path is a two-way.
The pedestrian overcrossing would be a 10-foot two-way path for pedestrians and bicycles in both directions, correct?
Okay. Yeah. So similar to, I'm assuming that's what the one is in Belmont. It's about 10 feet wide.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I can see where you start on the west side, but when you get to the east side with any of these, where is it that you end up?
Well, you can see in the rendering here that we start over at, as you say, Industrial and Holly Street. We climb up, become elevated so that we can cross over the new southbound entrance ramp, cross over Highway 101, and then we shift this new northbound exit ramp such to create a space between there and Skyway, and then once we cross over here, about this point, we start to drop down on grade, and we connect back up at Holly Street, just on the other side of the new northbound exit ramp. We are also planning on providing a connection directly to Skyway, as well as continuing the bike path along Holly Street towards the east.
So right now, there on the east that's going into Redwood Shores.
Correct.
And there's a bike, I'm trying to think even if there is a bike lane now, because there's a bunch of right-hand turn lanes for Pacific Athletic Club and then the grocery store outfit that's there and so forth. So where does that, I guess that's why I'm asking the question is where do you end up and what kind of condition?
We end the improvement of this particular project with a bike path that will continue all the way to the intersection of Skyway and Holly Street where Redwood Shores picks up. And I believe that there are on-street bike lanes at that location. So once you start at Skyway and, a little off this map, Skyway and Holly, you can either come down Skyway and connect across here, or you can stay on this side of Holly Street and connect up to this path.
So there might be a way to, when you say Skyway, the reason I'm asking is because I know at BPAC, which I sit on for the the CCAG thing, there have been cyclists, commuter cyclists especially, that have asked Samtrans to open the gate so that you can go through where Homestead is, I think is the business. And there's number one, there's the Bay Trail, and number two, you can easily go through the parking lots and kind of behind all those businesses that are there, and go through the Samtrans, if they open the gate, you could go through the Samtrans place where they drive the buses through into maintenance and come and hook up with this.
Mhm.
If
Well-
you can't do that, then the argument that people have is you're still leaving cyclists on the street, which is okay, except in this case you got a lot of people making right turns either at the athletic club, the office building, the athletic club, and then the shopping center. Maybe it's not, I don't know, it's not really part of this project in a
No.
way, but if there's,
That's right.
That's
I
why
think-
but I do want to know, it is part of this project in the sense of where are we in that,
Well, I can't
line?
address what Redwood Shores is conducting. Maybe, Jay, you have some further insight about further to the east.
So the goal of the project will be to connect up with Redwood City's on-street bicycle configuration as you
Right.
head further to the east. It was a separate question as to whether or not there would ever be access allowed through Samtrans kind of in the back way through there. We could inquire about that, but we want to make sure this project establishes a complete connection between the east side and the west side of the freeway as it relates to what Redwood City already has in place in their city limits over there in and around the Bay Club and the shopping
Right.
center and things.
Because just to finish it up, and so council understands, if you go to Skyway, that's great if you want to go to Hiller or something like that, off that direction. But if you want to continue heading east, you could take Skyway, but you end up at an intersection of the road that goes into the airport. So that doesn't do you any good. And it's bothersome to me to create situations where you're dumping bicyclists off and then saying, okay, now you figure it out, and it's not really a safe place. I don't know if there's a way, Mr. Mayor, that we could, in approving this project, put some leverage on Redwood City and Samtrans to say, hey, we've approved this, we've gotten the bicyclists and pedestrians this far, and in approving this project, we're putting forward also a request to you to look at this situation and, try to further the safety that we've already created by getting people over 101, by letting them move safely from this node east.
Is that something, I certainly have no objection to, I think it's a good idea to have staff perhaps reach out to Redwood City about that. I'm also wondering, wouldn't that be grist for the mill for BPAC?
BPAC, we have people come and speak to us, but the problem is, as Bob knows, we're just, we just look at projects that come to us and approve the money or don't approve the money. If they don't look like they are cost effective or improve safety features enough, then we go on to the next project. So it's not something, we don't drive policy that way. We just react to what's brought to us.
Mr. Mayor, I'll ensure that we will reach out to Redwood City and Samtrans as this project moves along to make sure that we have established connections there that are taking advantage of the best ways that we can get cyclists safely and efficiently through that area.
Bob, isn't this something also that Sandy at CCAG somebody could talk to her and see if she was willing to look into this?
Well, yeah, that was my part, just as an aside. Where's the money coming from for this?
This is,
Again?
There's two sources of money for what we're working on right now. We do have the Transportation Authority, $1.5 million.
Right.
And then we also have a bicycle pedestrian grant of $100,000.
Right.
That could be used for the kind of the
Right.
study of this purpose.
That's a 1.6. Where's the other 15 million or 14 million come from?
Well, we haven't figured that one out yet.
You're kidding, right?
No, we don't have any construction money lined up for it other than what we may have, say, in the neighborhood of.
But the city's going to have to pay for it.
We will have to pursue grants to pay for it.
But can't we go to CCAG for some of that money?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So that's where I think we can, when we get to that step or whatever, then we go to CCAG and we say, okay, let's see what we come up with on that. Because they usually contribute to this.
That's
well as the TA, Transportation Authority.
Just if I may, it also, if the city goes to BPAC, it'll be part of the scoring because part of the scoring on a project is connectivity, increase of safety, and those things.
Sure.
That's,
But your point is right. We go to Sandy and say, hey, look, we got this project and.
Probably to start going now, too.
Yeah, well, exactly, that's right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay.
Matt, did you have anything else?
No, that's
Okay.
it. Thanks.
Cameron?
So the question of how we're going to pay for this, I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. So first of all, this project predates me joining the council, but I think it's an awesome project. And as a cyclist, I've taken my life into my hands trying to get over the freeway before, and I didn't want to repeat it. So I'm glad we're creating an option here, and connections to the Bay Trail and all that stuff is great. But so can you enlighten me a little bit about what's a path to find $15 million for this?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We currently have secured the 1.5 million, which we're using, the 1.6 million, which we're using for the environmental document, and that's through the Transportation Authority. One of the conditions on getting money for the design of the project is to get the environmental document approved. And so we will be working, as Keith now moves forward, we'll be working on getting that environmental document approved and then talking to the TA about essentially authorizing and allocating the money for the design portion of the work. While we do that, we will be talking to them about the potential of Transportation Authority funding for the construction portion of it. We also will be looking at the options potentially of going to the State Transportation Improvement Program that is essentially controlled and programmed by the California Transportation Commission, and any other sources of funds which we would be able to apply for or take advantage of. But we see this as essentially going to have to be a other people's money project for the bulk of the construction. So we'll be pursuing that vigorously.
And are you optimistic about that?
I'm very optimistic, especially from the standpoint that the TA is programming the environmental money and contingent upon its approval, the design money, and then I see that as a real lead-in for construction money.
And then do we own the Cloverleaf? Is that city-owned land, city-owned? No.
That's Caltrans land.
Okay. And so, but we have the responsibility for financing, coordination, construction of the Caltrans-owned land? Is that?
That's correct, and it's largely because it's a local agency-initiated project.
I see.
Rather than a Caltrans project.
Okay. And then, I know this is hard to look into the future, but what's a hypothetical timeline for this project, sort of, or a band of potential timelines, given where we are?
Sure. One of the drivers is the completion of the Palo Alto Medical Facility and getting that open. So that generates new traffic. I think we were targeting, starting in November. So under the fastest time frame, we would anticipate we could get the environmental document clear by the end of this year. If things drag on into the first quarter of 2015, then perhaps no later than the spring of 2015. After the environmental document is approved, then we seek funding for final design from the TA. Final design is another 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years, so that takes us out to being able to advertise the project in the mid-2017 range. This is probably a 2-year project to get constructed, so at the best, we would be open to traffic by mid-2019. That's if all the ducks fell in a row seamlessly, which has happened before. And as Jay says, we do have a project supporter in TA because they are funding a good chunk of it. So that is not an impossibility.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Thank you.
Bob, did you have any other
No,
questions?
I didn't. Thank you.
Ron?
Keith and Jay, I'm glad you mentioned that the grant money is most likely out there, because it was my understanding before that there were state transportation funds that were going to be financing this program. Maybe I just made an erroneous assumption that that money was going to be available, but it sounds like it's not a slam dunk, but we just have to go through the process.
That's right.
Right. And then the other thing I had is that I noticed it says in here that that Alternative 2 is preferred by Caltrans, and as I recall, there was a time when they didn't like our alternative, and that was, how did that numbering change? Was that Alternative 1 the one that we wanted before?
Correct.
Okay, so when we changed basically what we did was we moved the pedestrian overcrossing, which was well south of it. We just moved it a lot closer, but not adjacent to. And that's why they now say it's okay.
Well, they liked the other one too. They liked it further south. The city had trouble with
No,
it
we didn't.
being
Yeah,
south.
you're right. We didn't like that.
And preferred, due to cost, significantly less cost, the loop-de-loop through the ramps.
Right.
now that we've done more engineering and we've shaved off 5 or so million of that former pedestrian overcrossing cost, largely due to right-of-way savings, that we now have a very cost-competitive pedestrian overcrossing alternative, and it's safe to say that moving forward with this alternative, which Caltrans also approves, if the city makes all the stars in alignment, that the city approves this as well, then it's relatively smooth sailing through the rest of the process.
All right. Well, I'm done with questions, so we can get on with approving this.
In fact, Keith, I think you touched on the main question I wanted to ask. So my recollection is that option 2 here, alternative 2, is significantly less expensive than the earlier variant of it that we saw. And you said that the bulk of the cost savings is in right-of-way. We don't have to be purchasing right-of-way.
Right-of-way, and it is a shorter bridge. If you look at the length down here, the prior alternative ran all the way across 101, had to be elevated at this point, went all the way along, I don't know if that's still San Carlos.
Monte Vista.
That's Monte Vista, looped back for grade to get back. So all of that is all on structure, not to mention impacts to the hotel and some other high-risk potentially costs or potential visibility, accessibility issues. We completely eliminate that risk by putting this bridge entirely within state right-of-way.
Okay.
Simplify it. So those are the things that help save the cost.
Kudos to whoever was creative and thought out of the box and figured out how to do that. That's very good. One way of looking at when you look at the cost differentials of alternatives 1, 2, and 3, basically there's about $4.5 million for doing the pedestrian and bike overcrossing.
Right.
And sort of following on my colleague's earlier questions about, we don't have the money for this yet, and we have to look to raise it from various places. Does having to raise $4.5 million for something that's not vehicular, it's pedestrian and bike overcrossing, is that an asset or a liability in terms of raising money?
I think it's actually an asset because of the emphasis that's being placed on bicycle and pedestrian connectivity. And simply by going up and down 101, you can see how many separate structures have been built because the interchanges are so busy.
I'm glad to hear that, because one of the things I was worried about a little bit is one of my neighbors was walking me through the history of the overcrossing that Belmont did. And apparently, it took quite a long time to get the money together for that. That was a one-off thing. It wasn't part of another project. But I was a little concerned when I first saw this, that because it was a separate structure, that the interchange modifications that get built in Manana would be the answer for the bicycle pedestrian, and that wouldn't be so good in my mind. But it sounds like you're confident that if we can raise the money for this at all, we can do the whole thing.
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Anybody in the public wish to address the council on this item? I don't have any cards, but if anybody does, now's the time. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to adopt Resolution 2014-64.
Yes.
I can count. A resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos selecting alternative 2, pedestrian overcrossing, as the city's preferred alternative for the Holly Street 101, US 101 interchange project C9459, and directing that alternative 2 be the only alternative to be fully evaluated during the environmental assessment for the project.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing the call for none, Crystal, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Obert?
Yes. With that, we move on to item 9A, consideration of approving a new objective and updates to the city's strategic plan and 6-month objective matrix. Good to see you again, Tara. We haven't seen you in a while.
Good evening. Thought I'd have a big audience for this item. I thought it was just such a draw. Good evening, Council and Honorable Mayor. My name is Tara Peterson. I'm the Assistant to the City Manager. This evening, I'm here to just briefly discuss the the consideration of approving a new objective and updating the council on the city's strategic plan and 6-month objective matrix. The first item is a new objective that we propose to add to the objectives, and that is under the goal of enhancing and sustaining facilities, infrastructure, and technology. At the May 27th council meeting, you were presented with proposals for the possible expansion of the Adult Community Center and the possible construction of a new community and aquatic center. And one of the concerns council brought to our attention was the parking issues, the potential parking issues. So staff is proposing a new objective, and that would be to issue an RFP for a consultant to conduct a parking study of the impacts of a proposed project. The Public Works Director has estimated the cost of this study at $20,000. In addition, we have some updates under the Enhanced Community Vitality, Cohesion, and Engagement goal. 2 objectives have revised dates. The first one is the Volunteer Summit. We've postponed this until a volunteer coordinator is hired, pending approval of the budget and that item in the budget. In addition, the Block Party report will be presented to council in late August. Another change, this one to the provide effective and sustainable community health and public safety goal. The environmental hotspots report will be brought to council on September 2nd, and this was delayed due to other priorities of the council. And finally, under the enhanced economic development, we have 2 objectives completed. The first was the landmark hotel developer was selected. And secondly, which Mr. Maltby already mentioned, was the Wheeler Plaza disposition is complete, and we just await DOF approval via a letter. And that is my presentation. Questions?
Thank you, Tara. Questions for Tara?
Hi, Tara. I wanted to ask about the Block Party report. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. So when you say, so we're kind of into Block Party season here. I think the weather is warming up. So what kind of report are you planning to bring in August? Is that kind of a how to go this year, or what we're planning to do for next year, or
It'll be what we hope to do, what we hope to accomplish.
for 2015?
Right.
Okay. And, okay. So, I mean, I guess it would be interesting to me to know, is August the best time to do it? Because we may want to wait until we see what kind of activity happens, what kind of permits happen, what kind of information we can get to see sort of, how many block parties were held and what kind of feedback there was without a lot of city support in 2014, and maybe wait for the whole season to go. I don't know. That's just a thought, but I understand these things take time, but I'd love to have a great program for 2015. So,
Okay, noted.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to vote against adding the $20,000. I think we could use a $20,000 in a better way than have perhaps I'm being cynical, someone come up and say, we need more parking because we're going to build bigger buildings. So I'm not going to vote against this.
Okay.
What about the rest of the strategic plan adjustment?
I don't have a problem with the rest of the strategic plan, but I don't want to add anything to it.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
Well, actually,
Is there a way to slice and dice it?
That probably leads us to, if there are no other, and I respect your point, there are no other questions. Is there anybody from the audience who wishes to comment on this? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion. And
sorry, jumped the gun on that. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I thought you were just trying to help out your colleagues on framing the motion, or maybe you want to make a motion.
No, I don't want to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve the new objective and updates to the city's strategic plan and the 6-month objective matrix.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion.
Well, you're going to make me vote against the matrix. So this, can we split that?
You could offer
Can we split the motion.
amendment.
You could offer an amendment.
You could offer an amendment to the motion, or you
Yeah,
could offer a
I'd like to make
substitute
it.
motion.
I don't have a problem with the matrix. I just have a problem with the add-on. So I guess I can make a motion to maybe reverse it and just say approve the 6-month objective matrix. Can I do that, Mr. City Attorney?
Absent the additions, right?
Absent the additions?
Absent the additions.
Absent
I was
the
just gonna-
additions?
Yes, you
Okay.
can. That would be a substitute motion.
Substitute motion.
We have a
Requires a
substitute
second.
motion. Is there a second for the substitute motion?
Second.
There is a motion and a second for the substitute. We still have discussion, but as council knows, we will act on the substitute motion first. So, discussion.
Well, I have a question. If we don't do a parking study now, when would we do it? When we get ready to actually?
Mr. Mayor, we're talking about the 6-month matrix now, the objective matrix. We're not talking about the parking study.
Oh, well.
I broke it up.
But since there's a motion to eliminate that.
Okay.
Right?
Fine, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to confuse
Okay,
it.
well,
Sorry.
that's,
sorry.
if we're going to have that motion, I want to.
Okay, sorry.
I might vote with you.
I understand, sorry.
So
Sorry.
I'd like.
I'm sorry.
I guess maybe the question is, if we're not going to immediately start studying the building of a new community center, aquatic center, why would we do a parking study now? Or why would we not wait until it was really an imminent project?
There is absolutely nothing to stop you from doing that. In fact, if you did the study now and, a long period of time elapsed before
redo
you
it.
consider designing the building or doing it, you would likely have to redo the study again. I think at the last meeting, the council was surprised by some of the parking numbers and had indicated a desire from the dais to have that type of analysis done now. If you'd prefer to wait, it's not going to cause any problems. It's simply going to mean that there's still an unknown out there in the future that we'll have to answer if and when that project resurfaces.
Okay. Any?
Okay.
Did they answer the question?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
Discussion is, for me, I saw the parking as being an issue if you're going to put in an aquatic center, but I think there's much more to it than just the parking issue. I would rather see something brought forward that shows the viability of the project altogether, because there's financial matters involved in construction, which are probably, to build it is one thing, but to operate a pool with your insurance and liability and that sort of thing, all those things have to play into it. And so I think you'd probably, you'd have to have something that would include some kind of, I suppose, a fee study. Do people pay to come in to go swimming, or do they just walk in because they're citizens or whatever? I think all that kind of stuff needs to be looked at before even looking at designing something or getting too far down the road.
So, I'm sorry.
If I may.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, as one of the people who did express surprise when we were staff was sharing the parking numbers with us at the earlier meeting, I very much appreciate staff coming back with this. This is essentially a little bit more thought into the question we always try to ask when we agendize something new, which is, how much is it going to cost? And I know for me, and I was thinking that I'd like some more insight into the numbers, but I'm not interested in spending $20,000 today to get that insight either. So I respect the fact that that's what it would probably take, but I'm fine being ignorant until such time as we actually are closer to doing it. Any other? Yes, Rob.
I just want to, just before we vote, just some clarity on Bob's motion. Just want to make sure that I'm voting.
My understanding is Bob's motion is to approve all of the changes that Tara described, except adding in the new item to do a parking study associated with a possible aquatic center, expanded community center.
That's
Is that correct?
Right then.
Yes. Okay.
Want to be clear.
Yep. All right. So if there's no further discussion, Crystal, call the roll on the substitute motion, please.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grisilli?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Obert?
Yes. And with that,
Score one for Bob.
we are adjourned. I got one. See